Good morning. We will be learning Rambam Hilchos keilim, perek Gimel halacha Aleph. One Rambam, one halacha. I'm also going to later tap into halacha and Hilchos Matam and Mishkav Meishav. That was learned earlier, but this is the main halacha, and it's one main line with some explanations. There's a concept in Tumah that in order for a vessel, a wooden vessel, to become Tumah, it needs to be not a vessel that's a stationary vessel, intended to be stationary, but one that is mobile. Now, the Rambam has a chiddush in this, and he begins the halacha with his chiddush. And that is kol kli eitz ha'osui l'nachas, any vessel made out of wood that's intended to be stationary. Now, I feel the wood. It's not stationary because it's too big to move. It's got too much stuff in it, and when it fills, it can't be moved. It takes a little bit, and you can move it if you want. Ain't never kabel to it. If it's not intended, it's not intended. And he adds leimin atayra, leimin divrei. Not min atayra, not min rabban. Now the other way, the whole creates also lihistalte moliv reiken kisak. If it does move, if it's mobile, something that you do move around, I feel like even if it something intended to house hundreds of stuff, which is takes a yeoman's work to get it to move. It's okay. And means that it has a place to it's made to rest. Now, where does the concept of 40 saw come in? Where the Gemara talks about 40 saw. However, if you have a kli eitz, that's stop. It doesn't have a direct intent. And it has a bottom that can sit on the floor. So it shouldn't roll. And it holds 40 saw. Belach, Shenkarayim Biyavish. Those are different measurements. Ain't a couple to a cloud, and I tell you, let me receive him. Because we assume these are things that have been handed down. Now he goes and shows us where we learned it from. Masak, just like when the Torah talks about Tumah, mentions sak. It is movable, whether it's full or whether it's empty. That's what a sack is made for. You can put it on your shoulder and you walk with it. It has to be able to be moved both ways. Excluding a wood vessel that's intended to be stationary. And the Ravid says, Amavra. I don't know where he gets this from. That a kli that is not mazik, abom saw. Know where he gets it from? From the fact that the Gemara seems to say that shulchan in the Mikdash. Now he adds one more word, which is a problem. Menorah. Shehikshu alayim. The Gemara asks about these cases. Klietz also nachasu. And the Gemara gives an answer, which we will talk about the answer. And even though they don't have 40 saw balach, so that's the only way. But he says it's not arrived there, because there we're talking about something that's not allowed to be moved. Now, what's he talking about? Which Gemara asks a question? Where would we find this question? This sugi is a chagiga. Chagiga, daf, and chagiga daf, chavavam beis. Mishnah says that in the on during the Shalosh Golem, they would tell people, don't touch the shulchan, don't touch the shulchan, don't touch the table. That's in the Mishnah. What do you get? Get a table in the Mishnah? We'll see soon. So the Bryce right afterwards, Tana, as he is Haru Shamatigu v'Shulchan Ubim and Neira. There it says both. Shulchan and so the Gemara asks, "With Tana did my time a ton of Neira. Why didn't it say Neira?" The answer is Shulchan Ksiv Beit Tamid, and Neira Ksiv Beit Tamid. Which seems to be the fact that it says Tamid means that it should always be there. It's just coming to tell you where to be, where it should be. Okay. Heck, the Gemara, what do we need all this discussion there? In other words, Tamid is that, therefore you can't make it Tamid. It's got to be there all the time. Why do we need all this svaris that it becomes that it might become Tameh, and we don't want it to become Tameh. It can't become Tameh. It's a kliyetz also nachas. It won't become Tameh. And the Gemara brings the reason. My time exactly what the Rambam says, but not as elaborate as the Rambam. Do me the sack. I sack without Maverekim. I've come without Maverekim. That one is much more elaborate, which is a problem because the Rambam usually sticks to the Lashon Gemara. And my answer is the Shulchan is also Metal Maverekim. Kidresh Lakish. Namresh Lakish. Lakish says that they used to pick up the shulchan. Miklal, it says shulchan ator. Miklal shu tameh. It could become tameh. How can it become tameh? Mamai places also nachsev. Any makabel tameh. Malamed. Shemagbi and they say you pick it up. Umarin by la'oler golem lechem upon him. You show the oiler golem lechem upon him. You say to him, look how beloved you are, that the bread remains fresh. So you look like Yisidura, and the Gemara tells the miracle that happened. Yeah, there's a big discussion exactly what did they do. On the surface, it sounds like they just lifted it up and showed it. But, the Yidden weren't standing too close. So what is how do you know that how warm it is, and how do you know anything? So some say there was a smoke coming out of it. That's how warm it was, like literally fresh baked. There are two approaches. One is that they actually took the shulchan, moved it outside. That's what the Rambam seems to say in Hilchos the way it's understood. And that's the way the Mishnah Melech explains them. And they brought it out to show. And the other opinion is no, that they did it in the time when they were switching the breads. They lifted it up to show them the bread. Then they took the bread off so people can see it's that bread, brought it to them, and they were able to see it. That's the Radvaz's approach, but not in the Rambam. The Rambam doesn't say that. Yeah, just that's the point. Okay, so let's get the bottom line. The Rambam says that a vessel that's not intended to be moved, that's the decision you make. It's not a vessel. It's not a mobile vessel. It can be moved. Who cares? The Raven, on the other hand, says it doesn't do with can be. It has to do with what. The reason that the Shulchan and the Menor is because you're not allowed to move it. All right, there are many, many questions on this, and we're not going to go into all the details due to time constraints, but I want to bring out the main questions. First of all, as we mentioned, the Rambam is much more Meirich And he writes, not just Masak Metaltal Oreka Avkol, Masak Shumestaltal Oreka, Av Kliates, Lo Yitamek, El Imkain, Oye Metaltal, Moller Rekan, La Hoitzi Kliates, Osul Nachas. He could have just written it in one line. Masak Metaltal Oreka Avkol. With one word, and again it goes through this long-winded, adding words, which is not his style. His style is to shorten, not to elongate. The Ravid asks on the Rambam, and the Ravid asks, we saw now that is an Isser. Now the whole world wants to know which Isser exactly is he talking about. What's the Isser? And we'll see. The Kesef says any day my Isser is with them. What Isser they're moving them? Now, some say the Isser is because it says Tomit. So they want to know, what about Menorah? Ravid mentions Menorah too. And there are Gemara that seems to be the Gemara later. Seems to be that the Mizbeach HaPnimi and the Mizbeach HaChitzin would also be a problem of Kliates, except for the fact that it's Mitzupa with Zohab. It's covered in gold. Mizbeach HaZahav, in the Cheshus. So what's going on there? Gemara seems clearly not like that. In other words, that Mizbeachos are also a problem. Now, the Kesef says, I don't understand what he's talking about. What's the difference whether it's because of Isser or because of we don't carry it? The boy doesn't not carrying it. Why do I care what the cause of the reason is? And as we said, the Mizbeachos would be considered Kli Osel and Achas. There's a Gemara Megillah that talks about an Aron for Sforim. That the Gemara wanted to move it in a place where it would block a doorway, so Tumah won't come into this medrash. It's a discussion in the Gemara there, and the Gemara says no. It's because the Kliyates also Nachas, since it doesn't become Tumah, it creates from the Tumah. It will prevent Tumah. So the Gemara says no. You do move it sometimes when there is you move it sometimes. And okay, that's not going to work. So it's obvious that there's no Isser according to understanding, and yet it would be considered clear because people do it, and there's no 40 sod there or Karayim. It's not like a massive. Okay, there's other discussions, but we're gonna stay away from those other things and just focus on this. So I want to suggest to you the following: that the Ravid and the Rambam are arguing in the concept of Kli'etz Osil Nachas. What's the concept of this? According to the Rambam, it's a simple thing. A vessel not intended for use. It's a description of usage. Osil Nachas means its usage is to be stationary. Osil Nachas, its usage is to be mobile. According to the Ravid, it is a piece of furniture, not a keilim. It becomes a different item. It's not a keilim. It's this thing becomes from being a kli'etz to a piece of furniture. That's what happens here. Yeah. So, with that in mind, I think everything fits in beautifully. According to the Rambam, the idea is something that's not used. Ain't darker the Mishnah. Ain't darker the taltal molarek. It's not the usage. That's not what I use it for. We need something that you use. The usage is tiltal. Yeah. And that's why the Rambam was Meirich, as opposed to the Gemara, to stress that it is not about a shame kli being either a kli or a piece of furniture. Kliates, it's metaltal malek. Lahoitzi kliates also not. It's just a type of vessel, type of establishment, type of usage. Oh, so the Kesef Mishnah says, if that's what it's about, who cares whether you don't use it because you don't want to use it or because you don't use it because you're not allowed to use it? But doesn't make a difference. Now, the Erchaim HaKadosh has a sefer on Gemara, and in that sefer he writes a svara like this: Vaket. If it's mitzad the keilim, I don't want to move it. It makes more sense. An isser is like a. You might use an expression, "Are you the revealer?" It's like so understand, a lion doesn't let you use it, so it's less of a not usable keilim. So it makes a lot of sense the other way around. That's a meidig taina. That ain't dark taltal if it's not the use, nor human use is greater than the fact that it's also. Also means I really would like to use it, but I can't. Comes along the Raiva, he says, has nothing to do with what I use it for. The decision has to be: is this a piece of furniture? Is this a keilim? Is this a display case, a display item, or a keilim? Something that has an isser is even more. That means that this keilim is out of bounds. It has to be a furniture. It's much worse than darkei. They're chayim svaras like the Rambam, and that's what he's going at. That's what he thinks. But according to the Raiv, it is not about usage. It's about the hefts of the keilim being a keilim or a furniture. Okay, I think that fits well into the discussion. Now let's go a step further. I'm not sure that the Raiv means isser, as in Yisurei Tumah or whatever. Because the Raiva mentions Menair also. And the Gemara talks about Mizbeches. And the Gemara talks about an Aron of Sorah. I think the Nakuda is, it is not covered for the Kli HaMikdash to be moved around. They have a purpose of being in the Mikdash. That's their purpose. Don't touch them. That's the concept of Isser that he's talking about. It is not an appropriate thing. And that applies to every Kli HaMikdash, that it needs to be used as it is. It's a piece of furniture, kaviyachol, in its usage. This is what it's intended to be. It's intended to be a display of shulchan, a display of menorah, a display of mizbeches, a place. It's not a usage item. It's a display item. It has a place. Just to note that we're talking about the mizbech hachitzen, the Rambam uses the lashon because based on b'chira mizbeach. So that for sure has a din of mocking. And the same thing with the teva with svarim. The Gemara thought it's a kli also not because you don't move svarim around. You don't have teva with svarim. It's not made for movement. But the Talmidim told him that sometimes you move it for the sake of. So there's a beautiful mefarish that in Kevit Shittas Kamoyi in Megillah, he says that the Talmidim told him that sometimes you move it based on mishtamer and you're moving it for the sake of the or for the sake of the sar. Oh, it's a different story. But then he said it's basketball. So, which is worse? Something that the Torah demands it be a piece of furniture, or something that you decided it be? Of course, the Torah's demand is much greater, and that's the machlek is the Rambam and the Ravid, and therefore the Ravid is all the questions that are asked on him are not a question. The Rambam is the Shita say the Gemaras are all fitting to what he holds. Okay, we're going to stop with this. Everybody be well. Like Gesundheit stark. Atzlocha Rabba.